Hey, we are here with Crow Inquisitors doing our post-mortem, I like to call these.
We're all dead.
Well, not that the characters are dead, but rather that the campaign is over, right?
The campaign is dead.
I mean, it is, because it's over, right? That's what happens. I don't mean it in a pejorative sense. Yeah, exactly. I don't mean it in a pejorative sense in any sense. It's just a fun... Because a post-mortem is like an autopsy, right? So what we're doing is we're picking through the game. Yeah, we're picking through the game and asking questions about it and trying to figure out what we liked, what we disliked, all that jazz. We're gonna do that today. One thing I did remember, we did kind of end our epilogue last week, not handing out the Arthur Awards for MVP and Workhorse. And I did just want to, right before we get into the questions, just ask that question first. Who do you think of that last arc, right? Who is the MVP, which is like the most valuable player, the guy who was out in front doing the big plays? And who was the workhorse? Who was the person who did everything behind the scenes to make sure that the ending happened? And anyone have a initial thought on that?
No, I think everybody was pretty equal in that last arc there. I mean, we all had our big moments, so it's kind of like deciding whose big moment was the biggest.
Yeah.
Everyone knows Alphonse has the biggest moment.
I do think that I think I would
Nothing.
say that Cantarius is MVP.
Yeah, I agree.
That makes sense to me.
He made the biggest of the big plays.
Well, I mean,
he became
you
demon
could say
god
that.
And then became the shield for the earth.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing
big.
that you could have done.
And,
Yeah, but
and
I also did
physically, he's
cause
now the
the-
biggest as well.
Also true. Yeah.
I also was the cause of, like the last problem. So
That's a big.
Yeah,
that's a big
exactly.
bonus.
Also
That's
MVP.
big.
oh, okay.
Well, you could say if that's the case, you could say he's the MVP and I'm the workhorse because I gave him
think
the
so,
ability to do that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, I agree with those.
I think so. And I think that what might be true as well, if we gave like another pair of MVP and workhorse, I think Dylan was MVP and Alphonse was workhorse.
Yeah, that
which
makes
is
sense,
kind of fun because
Yeah.
right, Alphonse is usually not I think he has gotten a workhorse one in the past because he does do a lot of things behind the scenes, but this one in particular was like he let Dylan have the shiny moment at the end, right? So
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, take your Arthur into the beyond, but just thought we'd hit that before we jump into it proper. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna ask some questions. We're gonna talk about the game. And yeah, I have a list of questions here that are in a rough order. But I'm happy to let us jump around a little bit. One thing I did want to talk about first was kind of the origins of the campaign. And we talked about this a little bit in the Crow Inquisitors season 1 post-mortem that I did for that like podcast version that we did. But I am curious if you guys have any other thoughts on like how the campaign began, your feelings about like the difference between the beginning and the end and, all that jazz. The one thing I wanted to say to get us started is talk about my inspirations for the campaign. Obviously, we have the kind of premise as medieval Suicide Squad, right? Working for a corrupt church as criminals being exonerated. And I gotta say, I feel like we really got some mileage out of that premise. Like everything we did kept coming back to the fact that these were like men with pasts that needed to get over the past and have to become something greater. And especially, it was so satisfying to see the last 3 seasons that we just played as the characters they weren't all there yet, but they were, we could all see who they could finally become, right?
Yeah.
This final paragon that they were destined to be. Yeah, how do you guys feel about that?
Good.
Any thoughts along those lines?
Good.
And it's fine if it's just like, yeah, I agree, and we can keep going.
I think that's my answer.
I feel like, at least for my character, that just his mistrust of everything, like just hatred of everything. Like I've lost everything. Like I put my trust in something, and now that's completely gone. And to go from killing people and being being a gladiator and having seen so much violence and going back to a place of deep trust in God, or it's like he had to find the person, the being to put that ultimate trust in it, but he thought it was just like, no, I'm never going to trust anyone ever again. And I feel like that was
true.
kind of his foundational.
And honestly, your faith attribute was really the kind of linchpin of that whole thing, because faith for you at the beginning, which was kind of funny. And honestly, if we were doing the campaign again, I might not have even let you had faith at the beginning, based on because you really had told me, you're like, I don't actually like the gods at all. I have no faith in them. I'm just using them. And I'm like, okay, I mean, I guess maybe that works. It probably would have made more sense in like the setting to do something like I have magic from them, but not faith in them, and then maybe get faith later. But it was so thematically satisfying to see that faith stat be there throughout the whole game and slowly become a real faith in something really powerful. Super cool. I really like that. And that was really the beginning of a lot of the stuff. Like we were at that camping trip talking about the characters. And that was like one of the first things we talked about was the faith attribute in Burning Wheel, and how you wanted to ascend to that 10 faith. And yeah, man,
nice,
good stuff.
It's fun.
I think that was my belief the entire game.
Yes, you had that singular belief. It was tweaked slightly, but it was always about getting a higher faith. The whole entire game, 81 sessions. And that's really the stuff that I love about Burning Wheel, is to be able to now, for the first time on the end of this campaign. I have finished Burning Wheel campaigns before, but none of them were as long as this. And I feel like this is like the first, like, this is how Burning Wheel is meant to be played, right? You play the same characters through 81 sessions of play, and then you see, whoa, what did they become? And very satisfying to see for all
long grind.
Yeah,
well, it's one of those Dark Souls kind of games,
Yep.
But yeah, one thing I wanted to mention about the origins of the campaign, where obviously it's Medieval Suicide Squad, and I'm not entirely sure where that came from. It was probably just because Suicide Squad, the movie, was coming out. And
it was coming out that year.
I'm pretty sure that's what it was.
Like when we started.
Yeah.
Exactly. I was thinking.
But the other thing that was inspiration for this game that only became obvious later in the campaign, and honestly didn't become obvious to I think almost any of you except for David. But end of season 1 it became obvious. So David and I, a long time ago, planned a D&D campaign called Of Swords and Crowns. We figured out the broad strokes of it. We didn't like detail everything. But we were co-GMing a game at the time, or we're planning on doing so, called Of Swords and Crowns, which was going to involve 8 players. That we should have known right away that wasn't going to last.
I don't remember that part. That's funny. Oh yeah, but of course that makes sense because okay.
Because then we have 2 GMs, 2 for each of 4 players, and I think the plan was they were all going to be together, but that way we would have the brain power to to keep 8 players going, right?
Yeah.
I think David was going to be the main, like, in the media res, like running the NPCs combat wise and whatnot, and I was going to be big picture guy. But anyway, the campaign was set in Ceran, the original version of Ceran, before it was this. And Ceran was at war, or about to be at war, with a country called Teco. And they were in a crescent of land on a continent very similar to the final version of Serragon here. But except it's all like D&D, right? So it was like there was like elves and orcs and whatnot. A very different setup there. But Serrano was like a kingdom of humans that were kind of Italian, and Teco was a kingdom of humans that were kind of Japanese. And the reason I want to bring that up primarily is because we planned the main point of the campaign, which was each of these 8 people, these 8 characters, were keys, right? Were the people who could find the magical artifacts that would save the world. And the thing we came up with, though, was that at the end of the campaign, we were going to have them end the world instead of save the world because they were tricked by the prophecy. So that's something that we came up with in like 2012. So I've known about that for a long, long time.
Been a while.
Yeah. For like 13 years. And yeah, so I wanted to bring that up as like that I knew that going into this whole thing. How did you guys feel about like the grand arc of the whole game? Now, knowing that, and because there was a lot of like kind of, a lot of different storylines that kind of took place over the course of the 6 seasons. But like the main goal of it, right, always was this cosmological thing of you find these artifacts, and then when you do, you actually end the world instead of saving it. Do we think that paid off? That was a good premise, and that we like brought it to its conclusion?
I think for the most part, yeah. I think a lot of Crow Inquisitors was more like a cinematic universe than it was a tightly coupled story about our characters. I mean, especially with season 3.
Season 3
like,
definitely felt
leaving
like
some of those characters, and then season 4, 5, and 6 felt so big brain that there was a lot of stuff that I was super satisfied with how we closed things. But holy cow, I mean, you could have gone 100 more episodes in how many like threads there were going on in the world that felt impactful, and it's like so yes, and I'm glad we didn't take it further.
Yes, no, I agree. Like, and that was my goal with, especially with the 60s. As further we got, as close as, man, I can't speak today. The closer we got to the end, the more I knew that that's what I needed to do, and try to close these threads as fast as we could. Because there was a lot of stuff, and a lot of it was just me having listened back through the first 3 seasons of Crow Inquisitors and wanting to pay off the things that we had already done. And some of those ended up just spiraling out of control into bigger things that we just needed to shut down so that they didn't get too crazy. And I'm okay with that, right? Like this isn't a novel series. In a novel, you would be expected to, in editing, tighten all of those loops and make sure that they didn't get out of control ever. But in a role playing game, there's bound to be loose ends that we just decide we don't care about, and especially in a game like Burning Wheel, where your beliefs are what we care about. Like, you guys are in charge of like steering me as the GM and making sure that I know what you guys care about and what we should just leave alone.
And you were pretty good at closing most of the loose ends near the end there.
Yeah, I'm glad. I hope. I really hope I did.
I think every character we cared about had at least some kind of
I think so,
closing or explanation for what happened.
The moment for me where I thought, I have no idea how you're going to wrap stuff up. Is when the like evil demigod person came to the city.
I knew you were going to say this.
That's why I was like, oh man, okay, hold up a second. What?
So real quick, do you guys want to know who that is? Like Connor and Jared and David, you guys would know who this is. That was actually Seth's character from Savage Tide, the ninja assassin guy.
Oh, nice.
That's that guy.
That's great.
So he in the kind of the novel version of our original D&D campaign forever ago that I had written, that was in Serragon, right? So there was like pieces of this always here. That was the version of the character I made, which his name is Talavel, and he was like, he wasn't a ninja, but he was like an assassin and whatnot. So if that was a lot of some of these things were callbacks for me for my own benefit. And I hope that I hope that it did spice up whatever session we were playing in. But
so here's kind of, so like for me, a lot of the like last 3 seasons of Crow Inquisitors was like the ending of Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood.
I know.
Where
I really know.
There were so many really cool fights, but it got to the point where it was like new enemy for Dellen to slice in half. Enemy.
Well, that's part of the problem, though, is like y'all are really good at fighting, and I wanted to give you guys chances to actually use those skills, right? Especially with David, right?
Because also, if at any point in any of those fights that were not as important as like where we were going with the fight, if Dellen had gotten a bunch of wound dice, completely disrupts the whole game. You know what I mean? So it was like a really crazy balancing act where
I know.
I guess for me, it was like, as we were playing those last probably more like the last 2 seasons where things started to really ramp up for me. I could like feel the tension. I was like stressed out for you, trying to figure out how like you were going to make sure it didn't.
Oh, believe me, I was at least
collapse.
I was at least 5 times more stressed than you were.
I mean, by the end, we were fighting gods. So I mean,
well, that's part of it too. Is like you guys are all, even by season 4, you were all powerful Burning Wheel characters. I wanted to give you like challenges that were befitted that and not like, and so you do have to like escalate it properly, right? You have to find ways to continue to escalate especially the combats. I think I did an okay job, and like it was maybe that god guy showing up that was like the one hiccup in that whole chain, and I tried to make it make sense. But yeah, like because I just saw a meme about the Legend of Korra. And one of the things that in the comments someone mentioned is like, how do you go from fighting the dark god of the universe and then get beaten up by an earthbender in the next season?
Yeah, exactly.
And it's like, that is an issue. Like when you get to a point with a character in a show like this, you have to balance that really carefully, because the end has to be the highest you ever get, right? You cannot peak and then go down from there. And when we got that fight with the god assassin guy, I was like, uh-oh. Like we got amazing Dellen kills a god moment, but I have to kind of hand wave now that wasn't really a god. He was kind of a half god guy. And,
well, it's a good thing that it ended with me fighting Cantarius, because that was like Cantarius, who is one of the characters who's built up all this extra. And it not only is it, both of us are powerful because we're the characters, but also you got to fight your friend. And it's like, well, it's not him. He's possessed by a demon. So it's kind of like, I don't want to go too hard. I don't want to like kill him. Or, that was also the issue, which I think was a good ending. Is like, this is it. We can't go any higher than this. And it ended up working out. It wasn't like, okay, no, we're done.
Because not only did it have the cosmological threat of all demon power is at Cantarius' disposal, which I think was the right way to do that.
I am all the Sith.
Exactly.
I am the Sith.
Yeah. But it was also the highest it could have gotten in terms of stakes personally, which is the more important of the two.
Yeah.
So for me, we could have not had a bigger cosmological threat, but had a bigger personal threat, and I would have been perfectly satisfied.
Right.
I'm not trying to say I wasn't satisfied with the ending. I was 100% satisfied with the ending. I just mean I didn't need it. I didn't need Cantarius to kill a demon god. I needed him to want to live, and that was my big thing.
Okay, yeah, that was your goal the whole time, was to actually get to the point where I was curious about that, because in Cantarius, as a character, you were telegraphing Cantarius wants to die so often that I was like, does Connor want Cantarius to die? Like, is that where he thinks this has to end?
That was after his son died, I didn't know where to take his character, and then
it was like season 2.
That was season 2. And then,
the whole rest of
season 3, it was. Season 3 was he goes and it's like trying to find a bigger purpose in himself, and he failed. And so I was like, okay, he has to spiral. There's no answer for his character besides a dark one, where he has to be willing to sacrifice everything of himself to try and just kill demons and die doing so. I was like, there's no, like, that wasn't me being like, oh, I'm really interested in making a character like that. That was Cantarius. That was where the dice rolled. So I was like, okay, well, now I have to, like, this is now Cantarius. So.
Well, since we're talking about kind of endings of everybody's characters, we can keep going on that and talk. We kind of talked about like Theo a bit, and Cantarius a bit. What about you guys, Dellen, Alphonse? How did you guys feel about like the way your character landed and how it kind of like the pace of it throughout the 6th season of Chrome Inquisitors, and just like how it landed for you?
Yeah, I really liked playing just an absolute scumbag the first season.
But it was like your type of scumbag, right? It wasn't like murder in an alley scumbag. Yeah, exactly.
he's the charming jerk.
Yes. Yeah. Yes.
Like Sawyer from Lost, or
I had
another character. I can't remember now. I mean, but yeah, that's the epitome of it.
I like
right?
Teabag from.
Yeah. Well, Teabag is at a whole different level, but yeah, but
Alphonse isn't quite like Teabag.
Very charming.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
no, that one was a joke.
Okay. Well, I mean, I could say manipulative, charismatic.
Yeah.
I enjoyed the progression of becoming less of a what's an appropriate word we can say on the podcast?
I think you just did it right there.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yes, the British word, like an absolute flower pot. Just being an absolute flower pot.
I particularly was really satisfied with Alphonse's arc. I felt you did a good job of naturally playing out those steps. Like throughout the whole thing of him wanting, like he wanted to be a hero, and it was very obvious in the beginning he wanted to be a hero for all of the wrong reasons. Like he was given this kind of this catalyst with the exoneration of like, okay, here's my new play, right? My new play is be hero guy. And then it became true somewhere in the middle there, right?
You had the fake armor, and then eventually you got the real armor.
Yeah, right. And it was so great to see. And like even in season 4 and 5 of Crow Inquisitors, Alphonse was still kind of faking it, right? Like he had the skills to match now, which was a big difference, but he still wasn't really good guy, right? He was guy trying to get glory in a socially acceptable manner as opposed to earlier. And then slowly easing into, this is actually the right thing to do. And also, I love the last kind of, like, obviously we have the last, like, hard hitting of, guess what? You committed, like, the Oedipus sin of all sins, right? You actually slept with your own mother. And that was the last straw in, like, a long line of horrible licentious straws that made Alphonse.
What's up with all the incest, Caleb?
We may talk about that in a second. But it really felt believable to me that would be the last straw for Alphonse, and I always kind of meant it that way once I realized that had happened. That would then send him in the final spiral he needed to be like, okay, God, I need help.
The last, like his last, like big character growth was like he was already like doing like hero stuff and like caring for others, but he still wouldn't take personal accountability for himself and like his kid.
Yeah, exactly. That was the last like most personal example of his final growth was him having to accept I fathered a child with my sister and I am responsible for him. So yeah, so good, so satisfying. Like it was a really simple moment when Alphonse just said, my son, right? Like when he actually just said the word finally. Yeah. It had such weight for me because we had been playing around the edges of it for so long. Oh, it was so satisfying.
I think that was a more climactic moment than him giving up the god power. Like truly.
Probably. Yeah.
I think it better represented like that accountability that you were saying, because like he finally is taking accountability for it. It's like, that's actually like
it's almost like by the time we got to he gives up god power, it's like, yes, of course he will. Yep. Yeah. Alphonse has changed. Yeah.
Yep. Like we expect him to do that now.
Yep. And that's a great moment to see, especially because of how slow we played it, right? And I'm honestly like I was floored by how well Jared did. Slow increments with Alphonse, slowly changing him over time.
Yeah, for
sure. Because I knew he wanted this to happen, right? That's the trick though. It's really difficult for me as a GM when I'm planning for something. To not give it away too soon because I'm too excited about it. It's something I've noticed about myself. My best twists are the ones I realize with the players. And I'm like, oh, this perfectly makes sense. And I realize it maybe like a session before the players and then I spring it on them, right? And I'm like, no, this has to be the answer because of X. But no one knew what the answer was until the session before. But when Jared set out to be like, Alphonse is going to be a horrible scumbag, and he will be the paragon of all heroes by the end of this game. He did it, and I'm astounded by you, my good sir.
Yeah, it was impressive.
I'm retiring now.
This is your magnum opus.
Magnum opus, yeah. I do think. I mean, we talked about this in the Crow Inquisitors season 1 Post-Mortem. But I do think that Alphonse is a very paragon of Jared's characters type of character.
Which is a little concerning.
Yeah.
Now we just gotta go completely opposite. Like it's not no character arc. It's like no, we're just the bad guy, and you gotta play it well. That's our next goal.
Just the bad guy.
Got stretched
completely, or just completely opposite characters that don't have like a character arc. They're just that kind of character, and you have to play it well enough.
Yeah, I did that with Caspian. I mean, I don't know if I did it well enough, but I played just a bad guy, and then he died.
Yep. Well, speaking of
Season 3 was frustrating playing against Caspian.
Dude, Season 3 was so fun.
I love Season 3.
I
like
too,
you and Theo had like such like big things on your shoulders, and David and I were just
having fun.
Having fun.
So true.
Funny.
So true.
Oh man.
So David, let's go to you though. Dylan, same question, right? Like, how did you feel about Dylan? Because Dylan also had a really big arc. I mean, everybody did, but like huge arc here.
Yeah. I think, like, when I made Dylan, I was like, I want to be able to kill things. And then after a while, I was like, okay, I can kill things pretty well. What am I doing here? And so I got to...
This is too easy.
That was, I think, one of the reasons I played Caspian, because I was like, I don't really know what direction to take Dylan, and I want to just, like, play a bad guy.
That's true. At the end of season 2, you did White Shade Sword lead everyone with 200 dice because I didn't know how Arthur worked.
I think I sort of felt like I did everything that I'd set out to do with Dylan by then. And so I was like, I think I'm just going to play another character. And then we came back, and I can't remember exactly why we ended up going back to Dylan. Like what had... I think it was like, basically the main plot, right? Like he was
he was part of the cosmology stuff.
Right,
yeah.
And so we went back, and I also rebuilt him because at that point we knew a lot more about how the game worked. Mm-hmm. And I realized it was a huge waste for me to gray shade agility just so I could have a gray shade sword. It made no sense. Literally wasn't benefiting it from it in any other way.
You mean you weren't planning on having a gray shade sleight of hand at any point?
Yeah, no, probably not. And so I think rebuilding the character, and he sort of became more of a commander of the Holy Knights kind of thing, and he had all this responsibility. And I think that might have been actually sort of where that came from, right? Like his story from then on became getting all this responsibility that wasn't who he was, right? Like, and trying to handle all of that and being someone who isn't just I kill things. He still was that, but he also had to try and be all these other things.
It's kind of like Dalinar.
Yeah, a little bit. He basically had, a lot, I guess. Yeah, that's sort of his thing. And I think that ended up turning out really well, especially because he kind of ended up with an ultimate authority, right?
Yeah,
or a responsibility, right?
Yeah, I feel like that was kind of what your character represented, and I feel like in the last thing that you did was exactly what you were thinking. Is like, oh, I have this ability, and I need to like take on some responsibility because I can be the one to kind of forward change. Was it the Pope? And you're like, I'm not really sure if I shouldn't be the Pope. I don't, but I want at least at the very least. So you're kind of like trying to change it without being the guy making the decisions, like the Pope.
Yeah. Well, that's the important change.
Be the Pope, but I do want to change it to be better. I can change the world, but I don't want to have too much.
That was the moment where it switched, though. It was like season 2 to season 4, where he had done the thing. He had used his sword to get change, but now he had to live with it, and he had to live with it in a way that he could continue. Like he was married now, he had a child. Like he had to level up from there to from revolutionary and reformer to like guy who is now in charge of the system. And you have to make sure that the system you wanted actually works and will do what you want it to do. And you have responsibility now to a bunch of people. Yeah.
And I mean, even when we were talking about what killing the God of War would look like, originally my intention was that he would decline that because he wouldn't want that, right? And so that was one of my favorite parts about his ending was that I went into that session I didn't know exactly when it would happen, when that interaction would happen, or even if I'd get to kill him, because I thought Alphonse might kill him. But if I killed him, I still expected that to be how it went. And so that was a really cool moment for me where in the role play it changed what I wanted from, or what the character wanted from my own perspective, right? What I was expecting from him. Because I wasn't expecting him to take it.
Okay.
What?
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
You hadn't said that explicitly yet. So that's what I was going to say.
Right. Yeah. I like I said, like when we originally talked about it way before it happened as a possibility, I intended for him to turn it down.
Yeah.
And actually, that was when I came up with the line of like, there shouldn't, I've seen enough death that there shouldn't be a God of War, or I've seen enough war to know there shouldn't be a God of one, whatever. And then after he said that line, he got pushed back.
It was like a Tarian who talked about like it as a responsibility.
Yeah, he got pushed past that to understand that that's like a really short-sighted view of it, and that I thought was really
it would
cool.
be the decision that season 2 Dylan might have made, because he was like, yeah, this is all too terrible. Like, you're right. Yeah, I need it. Like, no one should have this power. And it's like, no, someone has to have the power. Like, it's power. Like, someone will take power.
Yeah,
that's how the world works.
Yeah, it's like a vacuum. Someone will always take it in the vacuum. So it's like either you take it or someone else worse does.
Right.
Yep. And that doesn't mean that doesn't mean that the power has to look the same way when you wield it as someone else, right? There's a whole big philosophical and political conversation about that there. But I really like that answer for Dylan. I was very satisfied with that arc. So yeah, I'm glad you were too, especially since it was such a last minute kind of shift at the end there. I think it all slotted together really nicely
I think so
when
too,
you look back. Cool. Well, let's kind of do some of these kind of other questions as I'll just scan through my list here. We just kind of started talking, but we hit some of this stuff already. Any like favorite moments that stand out to you? This is a typical question, but just like the moment you first think of when you think of Crow Inquisitors, when you're like, yeah, that was so good. It doesn't have to be like your own character's moment, just like a standout moment that we can throw out here. Get us talking about the game a little bit more.
I mean, there were a lot of them.
Yeah.
There are quite a few, but one of the ones for me probably was the end of season 3.
Yeah.
Where he was going to have that showdown with Theo's cousin. I can't remember his name now.
Iris.
He's going to have a showdown with Iris, and then Theo had that moment instead, and he went and confronted Caspian and had that like philosophical conversation with him. That
was a funny one where you guys finished the conversation and realized there was no role because neither of you could be convinced by the other of anything.
Yeah.
That was pretty fun. Yeah. I liked the ending of season 3 too. The moment that I got to have that NPC that you had redeemed at the beginning of the game come to you and basically say, what are you doing? Like, I know I'm in your inner circle now. I know that this is all a lie. Like, and you were like Cantarius and Theo and them were struggling with like, what do we do with these cultists? And he was just like, tell them the dang truth. Just like give them the truth. And we got that. It was a really difficult, ugly truth test that Connor succeeded as Cantarius. And it works. Because you were so worried, Connor. You were so worried, like, this is going to all fall apart. It's going to be terrible. I'm going to fail this role. And then you just succeeded. And the cult dissolved peacefully. And you were like, wow, I did it.
Can you imagine if I had failed that role, where Cantarius' character would have been instead?
Yeah. Well,
it was already pretty dark.
Yeah. I think if he had failed that role, I think Cantarius would have started his dark Cantarius character sheet right then and there.
Yep. It would have gotten corruption. Any other moments stand out?
I did like the end of season. I think it was season like 4 or 5 when I had the first time I had white sheeted faith when we were trying to convince a lot of people, and then we fought the ninja dude. I felt like that one. A lot of things happened. Like people kind of died and got stabbed, and we were fighting. What was his name? Constantine
Constantino, yeah.
And we're just like, why can't we defeat him? And I feel like that was like almost like a low and high moment at the same time, because everything was, I had this crazy faith roll. That's when we first got like God killing weapons and had to fight this guy. And I feel like that was, like Alphonse, Della and I started talking to Alphonse about like having faith, and that was like a moment where you started to change. I think Cantarius too, or because we were trying to convince everybody like, hey, we need to have faith together because we need to depend on God's power because magic was pulled out. I think it was end of season, whatever season was.
I think it was season 5. Yeah,
season 4, 5, and 6 is one season in my head.
It's one gigantic.
You said 4 and
season.
5, and I'm like, How many seasons were there?
Yeah, the last 3 seasons
that was like
one giant season.
Yeah, okay.
That was a pinnacle moment where we all, at least the perspective on the gods started to change, or at least, the one true god, where we're like, oh, okay, we need to double down because the gods or the patron saints took away the magic, and now it's like we need to have faith. And Theo gets this crazy faith, and then Alphonse starts to come along, and Kintaris is kind of like, well, maybe there is a chance. And I feel like that moment, paralleled with like the last thing I said to him, kind of went together, where he said, I don't think I deserve this. And I was like, neither do I. And I think I said something similar to him when we were talking in that in the church or something.
Yeah, I think you might have. Yeah, we'd have to check.
I did like that moment. I think a lot of things happened just in that scene that was action packed in multiple different threads.
That was the great temple. There was a lot of stuff that happened in that temple during those sessions there. You fought Constantino in there, and you figured out that the patron saints had all left everybody, and there's a lot of stuff that happened.
I felt like it was like the last push. It was like, this is the moment where we're like,
I meant it as like the last, like the kind of dark, kind of a dip down, where it's like, before we, and then pushes us into the end. Jared, anything jumped to you? Jumped your mind?
It would either have to be the big speech I had I think it was season 2 against the demon guy.
Ooh, yeah, the deal of wits against Eurus. Yeah.
Eurus. And then the part where I got rid of David's brain explodey.
Oh yeah.
Really.
Yep. We had some really cool like secret Alphonse sessions during season 2.
Yeah.
Okay, I was about to say, is it weird that I don't remember either of those situations?
I don't remember though.
Funny.
You remember Duel of Wits with Eurus?
No, I don't.
Remember, you guys had taken over the cult in season 2. You're a part of the cult, right? You had split the cult. And then you guys were in the fortress, and you had a fight with the cultists, and they were trying to break free. No, it was...
Yeah.
No. You had fought the cultists in the courtyard, and then you were Alphonse tried to meet with Eurus and basically say like, okay, we need to get together and like make the cult all one, like under my banner. And so you met in a duel of wits outside in the courtyard there to like decide who the cult would follow. Well, it ended with
Kentarius taking them, right?
Well, everything went crazy because the Holy Knights showed up. That's how it ended.
Oh, okay.
And then you went for Eurus and then brought him into the fortress, and that's where you got interrogated and then died.
I vaguely remember that.
But it also ended with Dellen cutting off the head of one of I think it was Jontos, cut off Jontos's head, and then it went into the fountain and sprayed blood.
Yep.
Anyway, there's a lot of great moments there. One thing I'm wondering about is in terms of like, I don't know if you got one, David. You have a favorite moment?
I mean, just one that came to mind. I don't know. Like I said, there's a lot of
there's a lot of moments.
But I really liked the moment that Dellen, like Dellen's sword being a thing, right? Where he gave it to Alphonse, and then eventually Alphonse gave it back, I think. Right. And then it changed hand a bunch of times, and it was really, I think, a good symbol for their relationship generally, right? Like it followed their relationship and like their brotherhood.
Very true.
Throughout the whole thing. And then eventually ended up being like a divine weapon kind of thing. And it was cool.
It broke, right? It got broken and then reforged as god weapon. Yeah, you're right. That is a good thread. In like a novel version of that would be a fun thing to follow.
Because like every time the sword came up, we were like, oh, but what if it was that sword? And so I think we really like, kind of subconsciously worked it in very
well, because it was like the one superior quality sword in the game.
Right.
Yeah, I like that. One thing I'm curious about, and this doesn't have to be a long thing, but were there any moments that what moments did you guys feel as players, things are genuinely like all is lost? Like they're like, like the worst possible thing just happened and I don't know where we go from here. Any of those moments stand out to you?
No, I don't think me as a player was ever concerned with the fate of the world. I think I was always just the low moments for me was when I felt like Cantarius should just commit suicide as the next thing he does.
Right.
And there were multiple that happened multiple times.
I feel there was a moment, I don't know exactly where it was, but it was near the end of like season 5 because we had none of the items.
Right.
And what's his name? What was the demon guy that wasn't Kratos? Faustus. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. Faustus. He had all the keys. He was like, I think the darkest hour was coming, and we're like, and I was like, how are we going to wrap this up? Because we had, and then at one point, what's his name? I can only think of Alfredo. Luca, yeah, Luca. You always call him Alfredo. So Luca, it was like we got to get Luca. And it was like, where is Luca? Luca, we don't have the keys. Where's Faustus? We haven't even found him. And I was
Luca.
Like, I just don't feel like we're gonna get there.
No one ever asks how's Luca.
Oh man. Yeah, that's where I also felt that way. That's where I was like, wow.
It's super important, but we don't have any of that stuff, and we're like worrying about like personal stuff as our characters, and it was like, this is bad. We need to. I was like, we need to go now.
That's exactly how I wanted you to feel in that moment, right? I think it was because you guys had failed a couple of rolls there, where I felt justified being like, okay, Faustus found all the keys. Like, here's the stuff that has been happening in the background. He's been doing stuff. Here we go, right? Like, and I'm glad that you guys felt that way because I meant it that way, certainly. Gotta have the darkest night before you gotta
have to fight Kratos in some crazy way.
Yeah. Gotta have the darkest night of the soul.
We meant our roles for good. The GM meant them for evil.
Indeed.
There was one time early on where I was just like, I don't know what we're gonna do because both Cantarius and Antonius were literally just on the verge of committing suicide.
Yes, that was that's why we did season 3 the way we did.
Yeah, that's why we shifted it. Yeah,
because we were like, something needs to change here. Any like really satisfying, like it can be in terms of burning wheel mechanics too, but like what are some like really satisfying moments? I know, like, Dylan, for example, got to do Lightshade Sword charge lead everybody in a charge. Any other moments like that really stood out to you as like, I've got all the dice, it finally did it, like it happened, and it felt so good.
Seducing my mom.
Faustus was.
Well, yeah, before you knew her, she was your mom. Was that a good moment for you?
The satisfying moment's been tainted for you.
Mm-hmm. Oh, no. You did roll a lot of dice there. Like, so we did a duel of wits with him against Narani, and she has like god stuff where like she can't like ever, like if she gets any amount of damage done to an argument, she gets like a major compromise or whatever, right? And he won the duel of wits in one roll, and she got nothing on his.
Quick tangent. I've never lost a single point in any of the duel of wits that I've done.
That's funny.
That's incredible. That's the sort of fun thing
like
that I would like.
The devil or something.
Yeah,
like the master of deceit.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, his name in the prophecy is Master of Flattery. So
yeah.
That's one of those things that would be really fun to do, and it's like, it would take way too much time, so I'll never do it. But like have burning wheel stat cards for people, right? Like the amount of rolls succeeded. They have us to like to tally those up, and like your hit rate, right? Your batting average, basically, and then like stats like that. Like never gotten a point in duel of wits, done against his argument, and never taken a wound die. That'd be fun.
Are you talking about a specific role that you think?
Yeah, like a specific role is what I'm thinking of, right? Like where all the dice got together and you did the thing.
In my head, I'm thinking when I saved Asia, I remember making like a faith roll, and I remember only like succeeding by like 1 because it was like a 10, or no, it was like I needed a 10 and I got a 10, and I don't think I had any persona. And I was like, oh man, I think I maybe used like 1. And so I was like, this is like, I have to roll a perfect one. And it was a perfect roll.
Yeah.
I remember it was like right around that time. And I brought everyone.
I think I remember that too.
I brought everyone back to life, basically.
Right. Oh yeah. Cause she had died. She got murdered. I remember that.
Because that one I didn't have, I don't think at that point I didn't have any deeds points. So it was like, I got this and it's going to end soon. And if I fail, like they're dead. I mean, it's like, I feel like that was a really crucial moment.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, Theo
barely succeeded.
Theo had some really clutch faith rolls. Like, Dellen, David continued to talk about how difficult faith rolls were for Dellen like the whole game, and they are, right?
Yeah.
They're very difficult to do, and especially difficult to succeed on to get advancement. But I mean, honestly, Adam, like you didn't have Gray Shade Faith for most of the game, and you plowed onward. You kept trying so hard to get those faith tests, and you really deserved the 9 faith you got at the end of the game.
That's all I care about, pretty much.
I really loved when you resurrected Gorath. He was known as Siegfried at the time. He got murdered by Josh's character at the end of that game. And it was a really clutch faith test. Like you should not have succeeded on the faith test, but you rezzed him, and yeah,
What season was that again?
End of season 3.
3, okay, I was thinking 2.
Yeah, great faith tests for sure. Anyone else have a moment like that?
My favorite was finding out who Faustus was, or who.
Oh yeah, at the beginning of the game.
Doing that
I can't
big.
remember the demon name. Yeah, it's the beginning
you
of
got rid
4.
of 3 episodes.
Yeah.
What's funny is he shouldn't have been able to succeed on that role because I should have remembered that Faustus had obscure aura on.
Yeah.
But I let him have it, so that was pretty good.
Connor deserved it.
He did. Yeah. No, I was glad he got that.
A win.
He did.
He failed so many roles in the first 3 seasons. He deserved it.
Mm-hmm.
It is so stupid.
All right, I'm looking at these questions here.
That was my favorite ongoing gag in the first season.
Yeah.
Is that Cantarius never succeeds a role.
I had a love-hate relationship with the game because of it. Like I still had fun with it, and I think it was because I just had accepted my fate as Cantarius is like the he's like the tragedy character that you laugh at because he can't ever succeed in like Sokka in the fortune teller episode.
Yeah,
that's kind of how I was like, yeah, except instead of kicking a rock and it causing a goose to eat him, it was he put a stick in a fire and it killed a child. So it was darker, but
well, sure,
you just had to laugh, you know,
or else you cry. Yeah,
kill Alphonse's love child.
That's the thing about Burning Wheel, and I think we should talk a little bit about Burning Wheel now. I think would be good.
Are you sure? Because I have some hot takes.
No, I think you should. I think we should talk about it because I feel like I understand Burning Wheel, at least on like a conceptual level, way more than I do than I did at the beginning of the campaign. Obviously, there's fiddly bits of rules that we always have to look up, but the game itself, I feel like I understand a lot of the like moments like that, Connor, where like Cantarius failed and whatever. They at least in the beginning, like the first 2 seasons, they were probably more bad GMing on my part than the game itself actually punishing you, because like there's a lot of moments like that. I feel like I have a much better understanding of not only like providing proper challenges to players according to their skills and making sure that I'm not like overdoing it with Burning Wheel, but also giving the players the tools they need to still succeed at the things they care about when it matters. And that's like making sure to inform them about how Arthur works and what to save it for and what not to save it for. There's like a bunch of little rules, like the health rules and other like things you can do with Arthur and stuff that help mitigate like wound dice and other like penalties that you can get during the game, that when you really care about a role, like Burning Wheel does give you the tools to like actually pile all the things in and still succeed anyway. So I'm excited. We've done a lot of Burning Wheel lately. We're not going to go back to it immediately, but I would love, especially I think we were going to do like a samurai Burning Wheel game. I'm really excited to get to that at some point, because I think all of our experience with Burning Wheel will make that second campaign so much more satisfying, because we'll already know from the get-go, like, here's the things to watch out for. Here's the way to maximize our enjoyment of this game. So I'm very excited about that. But like, what was your guys' thoughts on Burning Wheel as a system? Maybe favorite mechanics, not so favorite mechanics, ways you'd like the system, ways you didn't like the system.
Armor was my least favorite mechanic.
Yeah.
I think overall Burning Wheel is, I think I've come to the conclusion it is not my style of a game. I feel like it's too Dark Souls-esque, and it's like
To be fair, a lot of that was the tone of the game we were playing.
No, I think it was both. I think we had
certainly
set the tone kind of correctly, but there were too many moments in the game where, to me, it was like, if I fail, I'll stop having fun, and that was like an awful feeling for me. That was kind of how I felt for a lot of it.
The thing is this also goes into my thing, but even if you fail, you still get like a success, so you get better at it. But with mine, it was like I had to succeede or I don't move anywhere. So that was so frustrating. And so like everybody's like, "Oh man, I failed," but you still mark that little little tick on the. Yeah. I'm like, I can't even do that. Like I have to succeed, so I had to spend so much like Persona and Artha to do that. That was annoying for me, but I mean, like ultimately, it ended up working out. But I feel like even so, Caleb kind of gave me a few extra successes in there because of, or not successes, but that one point where I basically was white shaded for a scene or so, and so that also kind of helped. I mean, that wasn't like a long period of time, but I got some serious difficulty rolls that kind of progressed me a little faster for at that point in the game, but. Like to have to get all that persona and then succeed, if you succeed and then if you don't, it's like, oh, I spent all that persona just to fail and I don't go anywhere.
Yeah. Burning Wheel is a game that rewards mastery. So the more you understand about its mechanics, the better time I think you'll have in terms of like, because you'll understand the stakes. You'll understand like, okay, I have no chance on this roll. I need to accept that now instead of getting my hopes up and then it fails anyway. Like you just have to be like, okay, cool. We're failing this roll. We're moving forward. Just keep going. A lot of this has to do with the beliefs and instincts mechanic, the interchange between beliefs and Artha. And I think that's where the game has the most chance to fail through bad GMing. Because I felt like a lot of the first couple seasons that was on me in terms of not providing the proper challenges for your beliefs or like ignoring beliefs because I thought the narrative demanded we go somewhere else as opposed to being like, no, the beliefs are what the game is about. Like what the characters are saying they care about. I have to provide challenges to those things. I can't ignore them. Like that's what they're there for. So because you guys need Artha to succeed, right? Or otherwise you can't succeed.
Yeah. Which I think is, I understand that's the point of the game, right? Like that you're supposed to, that's frustrating for me. I hate having to spend Artha to feel like I have a chance. Not because I think it's a bad design, just because for me, I hate spending stuff. I'm the person who ends every game with 500 potions. Yep. So when I'm like, if I don't spend Artha, I just fail. I'm like, fine. But I'm going to need it later and not have it. And,
to me, it's like a gambling. That's kind of how the game is set up to like be exciting, is you want to spend all of your points on the gamble. And like it's so mechanic heavy and the consequences are so dire that it's supposed to be exciting with high stakes and high reward. And to me, it's like I hate that experience.
But that's also just dice, right? Like no matter what, you're literally using a gambling implement to decide whether or not it's successful. So like I feel like that makes sense. But
the dice are weighted in such a way that if you're going up against things that are like more than trivial, you have to spend a bunch of points to have a chance at winning.
I'm sure.
And so it's like it's a gambling mechanic on top of a gambling mechanic. It's too much for me.
Sure.
I can't take it.
Yeah.
I was a little sad that like when I think at the beginning of the campaign I was thinking I'm going to use steel a bunch, but I feel like we didn't really start using it until like halfway through, and it was like,
that's true. I didn't understand some of how it worked until about halfway through.
And we should have been leveling it up every episode, basically, with how much crap we were seeing the first couple seasons.
At the same time, steel mechanics, like when you fail a steel mechanic,
you just lose.
The consequences are so dire. So I feel like so much of the game wouldn't have been fun or satisfying had we failed all of those different all the health roll, the health tests and the steel tests and stuff like that. So the mechanics are super cool and realistic, but in it, like imagine like we're in that last fight with the demigod or whatever, and we're like, oh yeah, let's go, Dellen, slice him up, and Dellen fails his steel test and runs away. It's like, well, the game's like, where do you go from there? It feels like the game has like made our characters like castrated our characters, and then like where do you go from there? So that's kind of how I felt.
Yeah, the reason we didn't end up using a lot of steel is because the main instance in which steel is helpful is the fight rules, because you take most of our combats, we used the other two combat systems, the instant resolution or the bloody versus, and there isn't room for steel there because it's over, right? So in fight, you're taking wounds incrementally, and if you fail a steel test, you hesitate for that many beats, you lose instantly. It's over, and you might as well just stop playing and die, which I think is a little intense. Unless you're wearing armor, then you have a chance. But and it's, I think personally for me, I really don't care for and I've expressed this before.
Yeah.
I don't really care for the combat systems. So I enjoyed some of the fights at the very end. I think I enjoyed the most out of the fights that we did in those systems.
I was really happy with the way we did all of those. Yeah.
Yeah. But
the volley
generally,
was the first time I was having fun with like fight mechanics.
The range and cover stuff.
The range and cover
that was pretty good.
Like, that was fun.
Yeah. And I just, I think that it also is weird to me that literally you have to build a character to be good at one of the combat systems, because they're all different things are better in different versions. Like someone who's good in fight is not good in bloody versus necessarily. And actually I built Dylan when I rebuilt him originally, because we almost only ever used bloody versus. I built him differently because I didn't need to worry about other things that are helpful in fight. So I just ignored those, and I built him to be good at bloody versus.
Yeah.
And then eventually just improved over time, and he was decent at fight too. But that is just strange to me also. And I felt like except again for the end being an exception, I enjoyed the combat less as time went on, because we were using more of the fights or more of the different combat stuff. And it just, those things felt a lot more frustrating to me. The problem was that the basic systems, the like resolution and the bloody versus, aren't very climactic. So like, they're hard to use for boss fights because it's just over too fast. But I didn't want to use the actual fight system for the boss fights because I felt
especially
like it was,
they're wearing armor.
Right. Yeah. And I love hating the armor rules. I like them because armor actually does what armor does. And I hate them because it makes it impossible to kill people. So it's like, I kind of don't really know. Like usually when I dislike a rule, I'm like, I wish it was like this. I don't really know what I wish the armor rules were like, because I don't think you could change them. If you changed them, they would lose the thing that makes them cool.
Right.
But then they might be less frustrating, but then they'd be less cool. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't really know.
Yeah, I am definitely interested in like when we return to Burning Wheel as a game, like sitting down and having a big conversation about those things, and taking the sessions as slowly, and setting expectations properly, making sure that we are going through each rule as it comes, and making sure that we're like all feeling good about it. I do think, Connor, that a lot of your frustration with the game was because of the type of game we were playing. I think Burning Wheel court intrigue game is going to have a lot different flavor for you than Burning Wheel dark fantasy game, by virtue of the way the rules punish you. Like, if the rules will punish you still, but it will be, oh no, someone doesn't like you, as opposed to, oh no, you got stabbed and you can do nothing now, right? So there is a difference there. I do think like that we already set the tone right away as dark fantasy, and that means that the rules of Burning Wheel are even more brutal. But yes, like I do think that I those are valid criticisms, valid concerns. I hope that they don't turn you off to the game entirely, and that we would be able to come back to it at some point. Burning Wheel is my favorite game personally, and I think that all of the things it does in the exact way that I love role-playing games to do them.
On the positive side, like Burning Wheel, I mean, I stole a bunch of design philosophy and some more specific stuff for Bonds from Burning Wheel, because my favorite thing about it is that it gives you, it lets you have character arcs as like a mechanic, a thing that actually like is on your sheet and changes, and you get to watch your character change because the things in your sheet are changing. And I think that's personally, I think that's Burning Wheel's like, real achievement. And when I was thinking about how I'd want to design my own game, that was one of the main things I thought about, was I want to do my own version of how Burning Wheel makes that cool. Because a lot of games you can just play through, like D&D, if you don't put the work in, your character will never change personality-wise. You might not even know what their personality is, and it definitely won't change unless you try and make it change, because it doesn't care about that, and it doesn't have any mechanisms to show you growth or to
It also
encourage
doesn't
you to
have any math.
push. What? No math?
No,
I don't understand it.
It's you like stuttered a little bit.
Oh, I said math.
You said
Okay.
math, and then you
Great.
corrected it, and I just completely derailed everything.
I didn't even know I said that.
I regret
That's
my
funny.
decision.
You should. No, I'm kidding. But yeah, like that's what I love about Burning Wheel, is that it made character growth and changing and development a thing that you got to watch happen and was rewarded, right? That
always
was
mattered.
Yeah. Which was the main thing, right? I was like, in my game, I want to reward characters for pursuing what they want.
Yeah.
Because then you get to see what they want change. And that tells you what's different about them, right? And I loved that about Burning Wheel. Still do. I mean, that's my favorite thing about it. And so I think, that's my. I mean, we saw that, right? Like all our characters had huge arcs, and I mean,
What one thing I wish, just a small thing, is that I wish you could spend more than 3 persona on a roll so that you could build it up, and then you're like, I have to succeed this roll, or that one big roll, and you're like, I have to succeed. I spend 10 persona, and it's like, I mean, you're still spending the persona either way. You're just like, this is the one that I want to succeed on, absolutely. And
I think those are what Deeds points are supposed to be, though, right? Because that's basically what Deeds points allow you to do.
Investment, yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I think it's probably to try and preserve like the narrative, because if you're spending 10 persona, you're probably doing something you're technically not. Yeah, I mean, you're probably not physically capable of that.
Yeah,
and so then achieving it is kind of confusing.
A Deeds point
right?
feels like more of a cost. Like you're like, I have to succeed.
Yeah.
This is a big cost. I have to spend this. Right.
Well, and that's also because
I like
so
to get
long.
yeah, well, that's what I was about to say. To get a Deeds point, you have to do a whole bunch of stuff and growth. So using a Deeds point to achieve something that you otherwise couldn't have makes sense, because you just spent all this time getting there. Whereas a persona you can get at the end of a session, and if you do that often enough, and then you just decide on this roll, I'm going to succeed, it could feel a little weird. I mean, I agree, and also that was how Alphonse seduced the god of seducing, was by spending like 20%.
We didn't realize that he couldn't do that. Yeah.
So I wish that there was. This is more like for the GM side, that didn't you say originally that 10 is technically the highest roll, but we ended up just going higher because
I
feel like that
there are other obs in the game.
Like
but typically the scale goes from 1 to 10. Yeah. Like,
and I like the fact that when you did it, you were like, okay, this is a 15, because that was like more of a cost. It was like, okay, 10 is not that bad when you got a Deeds point, or you got a bunch of persona, or you got help.
Well, the thing about the game though is 10 as base ob is the highest, but there's always ob penalties. There's always how I try to flavor it.
Fair enough. Yeah.
It's always how I try to flavor it is, here's the base obstacle. It's a 10 because that's the highest, but there's even more mitigating factors like the darkest hour and the fact you're doing it on 2 people. That's what I
like that. I thought that was good.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah. Plus 10 is also the highest your stat can go. And I mean, unless you have a bunch of forks, you're only going to succeed on half of those. So if your ob is 10, you got basically no shot. And so, I think it's intentionally, I think because we played so long and our characters got so cracked, that's why it started to feel like 10 wasn't good enough. But normally, I mean, 4 is like, fair. Oh my gosh, are you serious? 4? Like, I got to get 4? I need like 8 dice.
Part of that too is the magic in the game. And this is something I want to talk about briefly. How did you guys feel about the magic? So obviously we changed it several times.
I feel like if we
that was going to be Jared's response
from the beginning,
so if we were going to do it again,
my character ended up so magic focused, having to relearn it every time and having it go from being like, I mean, it got nerfed multiple times. For me.
If I was going to do it again, I think I would have, like, we were going to do this whole campaign again, I would have not used a custom system at all. I would have said we are using art magic from the Burning Wheel Codex, and we are doing it exactly as written, because one of the things that actually ended up making it overpowered in some ways too, and more complicated, is because you have all of these disciplines and they can help each other, which you're technically not supposed to be able to do in the game. Magic is supposed to be powerful but dangerous. And by the end, Alphonse was able to regularly get +3 dice to anything he ever did. Because
part of that was
so easy.
So
yeah, that's true. That's true too. But I would have. I think and this is something that's just true about Burning Wheel in general. I like the way that they have the magic systems in their rules work. I think they're well balanced and they do a thing that they're trying to do very well. My attempts at cobbling together something based on my high school fantasy role magic system that I made up back was not a good idea. I should have just done the Burning Wheel magic from the beginning, and I think we would have had a lot more fun with it. But
I mean, I think even there, like, and I don't know the exact rules because I never had to do it really, but
yeah,
I think there again is a situation where in like something like Bloody Versus, magic slaps, and then you go into a fight and you're like, give me 10 minutes, hold on.
Well, I think that's one of the reasons that range and cover. I think it's one of the reasons that range and cover felt so good for people, because every volley was enough time to do anything you needed to do.
That's true. And maybe that's the idea, right? Maybe they expect magic to be getting used in range and cover.
I think so, right? Because it's a ranged thing usually.
Splitting that and fighting doesn't make sense to me. Like literally, you could just add combat rolls to range and cover and have an infinitely better combat system than you have with fight. And I don't understand why they split them. It's very weird because I don't know how a bow works in fight. Like, if you want to do that, how does that work? I have no idea.
Yeah, one idea is we could do like range and cover, and then when you zoom in, you do a bloody versus.
You could literally just have it be like when it's your turn for an exchange. If you're in melee, you just do a bloody versus, because it even has a thing where you can continue fighting or end fighting.
Right,
you take wounds.
Yeah,
that honestly wouldn't be that bad. There were a lot of little fiddly bits to the range and cover that I think we could probably smooth over.
Yeah.
I'm happy to take a look at all of those subsystems when we return to it.
Yeah. That was definitely the most interesting
in 10 years,
combat system we had.
In 10 years, we should have this conversation again.
We'll see. I think you guys will be excited enough to do that samurai game that we'll return to it before 10 years have passed. But
yeah, I am interested in the samurai game for sure. And yeah.
Cool. Any other last thoughts you guys want to have? There's like plenty of random little questions here, but I think we've covered most of the main stuff that I wanted to talk about.
My questions, Caleb, were who was your favorite NPC?
My favorite NPC. It was really fun playing Constantino and having him come back so many times.
Wrong answer.
That's an old man.
Yeah, we made that joke at least once. I loved that a lot. Yeah. I was really happy that we got to have that Gorath Constantino show off as heads at the very end.
Yeah.
I was so
that was pretty good. Yeah,
that was so good.
And then favorite season or arc. What was yours like?
I honestly have to say that I really liked season 3 of Crow Inquisitors. I think, and part of it is because I think Burning Wheel shines best as a primarily like a political intrigue, court intrigue game where most of the time people are talking to each other. I think that's where it does the best. Like
I suppose
it is so good at doing that.
We probably had a lot of fun with that because
you got to put that up on Spotify because I don't remember. Or I mean, I want to hear the whole thing back.
Well, so that's another. I did want to touch on that briefly. I don't think I'm going to do the podcasts, the condensed versions of these things. It takes so long. I would like to do something else with my life besides do a Crow Inquisitor. It will take the next 6 years of my life to just get those all done. Like I'm not. It's because there's so much noise. And Adam, it's mostly your fault. Playing the guitar while we're doing it.
Oh man!
Those are some of my best memories of Crow Inquisitors.
And it might have been you just thought you were muted, but you weren't. But
Adam and his like what seemed to be like a frat house based off of him like walking around, and there's just like guys hanging out everywhere.
5 roommates.
I had 4 guys in a room about the size of the room you're in right now.
So you're hiding in a closet playing the guitar.
It was crazy.
Oh man, it was so funny.
Yeah, so if you want to...
That was another thing.
I just at least want to see it. Is it up somewhere? Or
it's
just
on
like
YouTube.
The whole unedited video?
Yeah, they're all on YouTube.
It's on YouTube.
YouTube, that's right. Okay, yeah,
the first season is edited, though.
Yeah, the first season is fully edited.
You
can
that's
listen
fine.
to it. Yeah. But second season, third season, unedited, up on YouTube.
Yeah.
Right now. I like third season because it was so like politics heavy, and there's a bunch of character interactions, a lot of like alliance shifting. I think that's what Burning Wheel shines at, and I do think that if when we do the samurai game, that's what most of the game will be about. It will be about the clans politics stuff, and then we'll have a climactic duel every once in a while for your honor, right? Like that'll be how it will go down.
I remember I think the most stressed I've ever been playing any role-playing game ever is playing the one-on-one game I did with Caleb with Gerwin, who we met briefly in this campaign, who was like a 13-year-old kid whose only friend was the Emperor, and his dad was a really important noble, but he didn't like him. And Gerwin would just go around and just cause problems for everybody. And every time I rolled, I was like, if I roll this, I'm gonna die. And I would roll, and I was like, there's no chance. I don't have anywhere near enough dice. I just failed a seduction at Ob 2 with 7 dice 2 minutes ago. There's no chance I'm going to do this extortion against Ob 6. And I would somehow get it every time. And that was the only reason Gerwin ever lived. And I would finish those games, and I would be like, my hand would be like shaking. Not because like it's just a game, but like it was just so intense. So I agree that I think Burning Wheel works best when it's like, I think it works best with escalating stakes. Right. Yes. And I think that is sort of the thing about a combat focused game is the stakes are always at max because you could die.
You know what that sounds like? That sounds like a drug addiction. You know, the drug is best when I take just a little bit more.
I don't think that's how people who take drugs feel. I think they take as much as they can and then they OD.
But yeah, that's one of the things that I think I regret about this game is like, and this is something that I think Josh pointed out like early on in the game that we were talking about, because he had made like a character, like Antonius was like a jack of all trades, had a bunch of little cool crafting skills and stuff.
And then there's just so much fighting stuff.
And then part of it was because Dylan was charging off at everyone, right?
It was. It truly was Dylan and Alphon's fault for like the side characters to feel unimportant.
And part of it, I think part of it too was me wanting to constantly push the narrative forward and like make things happen all over the time. Like Burning Wheel is best as a slow burn, low stakes to high stakes game where you have breathing room, a lot of time passes, and you can do a bunch of different things and then see the fruition of your plans over a long period of time. Again, that's just something I've learned about Burning Wheel. You can do this type of game we did, and it is way more stressful and the consequences are way more dire. And if that's what floats your boat, then great. But I do think that the next time we do a Burning Wheel campaign, that in probably most of the Burning Wheel campaigns we do from here on out will be that. Will be more about, and partly it will be whatever characters you guys want to play, right? That'll determine it. But I think I've gotten better at not trying to force a narrative on the characters, but rather let the narrative breathe and like inform what we actually care about. Because like if we had started off season 1 of Inquisitors and you had gone to the village and I've given you the premise of like, okay, you need to like root out the cult, and we hadn't immediately gone to, okay, there's an attack at the Abbey, everyone's going to go run off everywhere. We could have spent weeks in that town doing slow political shifting and talking to a bunch of interesting NPCs. And I feel like we all would have had a lot more fun learning the system that way and spending a little bit like going a little bit slower, and it would have worked a lot better. But yeah, just, hindsight, you learn things about the way the game works.
Yeah, of course.
Yep.
You have you as a GM always goes multiverse as fast as possible. I mean, that's kind of how I see it.
I don't think I do now. This show went there season 1. Because that was 10 years ago. But I don't think I do that now. I think I've learned. The last couple of campaigns we've done, Connor, already went multiverse before we wrapped around to finish them. We were coming
back around to finish them up, so we had to deal with the multiverse aspect.
No.
And I mean multiverse loosely, as in like everything
big cosmological stuff.
Yeah.
Large scale.
Everything that we're dealing with, all of the threats are bigger than us in every conceivable measure.
I got a question for you, Caleb. What was, as the GM, what do you think was for you the most shocking moment, or like the moment that was so unexpected?
Yeah. That's a good one.
Yeah. Ooh, good question.
Where you're like, I did not think that was going to happen, but like that, like we got you, or like impressed, or not impressed you, but just kind of like just.
I know there were lots of moments like that for sure. but I try to, after the fact, tie everything together so tightly that it's hard to remember them now because it feels like they always should have been there, right?
Because that's your job, is to tie everything together with what actually did happen. So
there's all sorts of possibilities.
Like your idea by the end of it.
Exactly. Yeah. There's all sorts of threads and possibilities that if we had gone back to season 4, never ever went anywhere at all.
It was probably
primarily because of roles you guys
something Jared did where you're like, oh, you made it super hard for Jared and Jared still.
That's true. Actually, no, that's the moment I think that I can point to. It was Jared like getting the curse off of them at the beginning. I think that was probably the biggest moment, at least the first big moment. And partially it was because Jared broke the rules that we didn't realize were there.
Sure, yeah.
I didn't wasn't your fault for that one.
Probably spent too much Persona.
But the idea of like
Jared, your goal in RPGs is always to break the rules. Of course, why would you even assume you didn't try to break the rules?
Yeah, you're right.
And season 2 had a lot of that though, where it was like I had a particular conception. I thought it was going to be more like season 1, right, where you go after the cult and then you beat the cult. But instead, it quickly fragmented because of Jared, right? Because Jared broke the rules of the premise that we had even set up for the game by removing the curse from him and Dellen, and then working behind the scenes.
Which was going to happen eventually, right?
Like it was, but it happened way quicker than I thought it was.
That was like the tether, right? You're talking about the
the thing that would like giblet you if you
yes
yeah.
You know what?
That was
a moment does just stand out to me. Not necessarily I was surprised by the characters, but one of my favorite moments, still to this day in any RPG we've ever played, but what happened in this game was with Trevor Sigmund playing Sergio. So he didn't play with us in season 3 and onward. I guess he was there for like one session in season 3, but He played Sergio. The last time we played Sergio was at the end of season 2 when he was the whole season I had been pushing him to take the Pope, the Pope papacy.
Popery.
Yeah, you are the reason I couldn't say that word. And I had been doing this political thing behind the scenes, and we played a 5-hour one-on-one Burning Wheel session with Sergio to end his character arc in that game. And it was some of the most tense, most rewarding, most brilliant game session I have ever played. One, because Trevor Sigmund's great in any role-playing game he's ever in.
He's NASA smart, so
yes, he's so smart, and he always has such good ideas about like the direction the scene could go. But it was me pushing him until finally I made him snap and he murdered a dude. And it was just me being like Sergio, you want to take the easy way out. You want to do the peaceful route, right? You want everything to be nice and dandy. You did a whole duel of wits here with your brother instead of just ousting him like you should have. And there's a whole big thing. But look, you have a knife in your hand. There's a guy you hate right there. You could end all of this by just stabbing him in the face. And finally, I got him to do it. And it was still, it was so satisfying.
He had an Adolin moment.
Yes, that's what it was. I still remember that session so vividly. It is, to this day, one of my favorite, if not my favorite Burning Wheels like session of anything I've ever played. And it's just because of how I was able to, with the mechanics of Burning Wheel, right? Like push a character to change, and in a very dramatic fashion. Oh, it's so good. Those sorts of moments are my favorites.
Nice.
Yep. I'm also happy that we got Sergio. I liked the arc we got with Sergio in the last 3 seasons too. I was very happy with the way we were able to end his character. So all very satisfying to me. Any other last thoughts or comments? Questions for me?
I think overall, like all factors considered, you had a very tough time GMing this game. Not only from we didn't know the rules going into it, so we were trying to figure stuff out. We were breaking the rules, so then you were forced to up the stakes. But also we lost players, and we had a start of a 6-player cast. So like the whole thing was just kind of a mess from beginning to end. And
you did
it was
a very
so much
admirable
fun.
job.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I tried, especially in the last like 3 seasons. I was in a lot of ways. I had set up a big sandbox thing at the beginning of season 4, like with all my
all the threads from the last 3 seasons, just kind of getting it all in there and having an idea for how it was going to go. And then from there, I basically just every session had like a few notes right before the session every time. And I was like, okay, I just gotta know just enough. Just keep going. But yeah, I think it all came together in the end. I especially am very satisfied with how all of your arcs ended. So I think it was a blast.
Yep.
I'm excited to play Burning Wheel again, but we can certainly take a break from it for now. What were you gonna say?
This might be one of the most satisfying endings for RPGs we've had. I mean, I'm trying to think of like.
Well, yeah. I mean, honestly, guys, doing an ending in an RPG is hard.
Oh, it's like stupid. It's actually difficult.
It's actually far harder than something you are in creative control over entirely, like a novel, because you have to you have to be true to the rules of the game. And still have it all make sense in the end, right? And it's a little bit easier with a game like Burning Wheel because, like in a game of D&D, if you TPK'd, you're dead. There is no good ending here. With Burning Wheel, you'll have those little narrative bits like Eartha and stuff like that to keep controlling the narrative just enough to make sure you get there in the end. But yeah, it's really difficult to like make it work with your roles and have it all tied together in the end somehow without it feeling too forced, right? Because I can't have too much control over all the threads coming together, or else it feels too it feels like I'm just telling you how the story is going, right? So it's hard.
I did die once, and I almost died like 3 more times. Mm-hmm. Like I was literally bleeding out in the church. Cantargus saved me. I died once, and I almost died again.
Yep.
There was several times where I was like dead, almost dead.
Mm-hmm.
I just thought it was funny.
Anything else?
Should we do one final salute?
Give your hearts, men.
Thank you guys for playing with us. For playing. It's been an epic journey. I've really enjoyed this campaign and getting to close it out finally. And this marks the end of all of the campaigns that we left unclosed that we started in rapid succession, right? We started Crow Inquisitors, took a break from Crow Inquisitors, started Elysian Road, took a break from Elysian Road, started Anno Domini, took a break from Anno Domini, started Hellbreaker Sequence, and about that point, I was like, we need to finish something. So we finished Hellbreaker Sequence, then we finished Anno Domini, then we finished Elysian Road, and now we're back to Crow Inquisitors.
That's crazy.
And we did it. We finally did it, guys.
Nice.
Can't wait for the book, Caleb.
Yes. So I actually have been thinking a lot about because now it's finished.
You got all the content. I mean,
there's going to be a lot that I will change.
Forget the podcast, man. Make the book.
No, and that's basically what I came down to was like I like this story and I would like to do something with it, but it's not going to be making a podcast version of it. It's going to be actually writing a novel or a series of novels. You're taking
the longer route that will make you less money.
Exactly. If I did the podcast.
That's arguable.
If I did the podcast.
That's arguable because I think it's more casual and so it's more long, but it doesn't necessarily mean more time because like the editing alone is just like you said, it's crazy. So it's like it might take him a couple of years, but he probably puts a ton of hours into it.
I can actually sell the product at the end.
You sell the product and it's kind of like you do a lot of work in writing a book, but it's kind of just like you can pause it. You don't have to it's not as concrete. It's okay. Well, how do I feel about this? And you can.
That's basically how I am doing fiction now, guys. I've realized we're going to keep doing these campaigns, and it's going to be the first draft fodder for the stories I will then tell, right? And so we're not doing like a Dragonlance Chronicles where it's just a transcript of their RPG session, right? There's going to be I'm going to majorly change everything, right? But it does. Funny. Yeah. But it does mean it's okay. Like they did change things from the original transcript. It's just like they basically quick on the Dragonlance Chronicles, I guess.
Sorry.
No. It basically they were originally modules for Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. And then they played through the modules with the characters and then wrote novels based on the modules and their transcripts. But it is different. It's not a 1-to-1. Okay. I was being facetious. Anyway, so there's lots of really good stuff here. like fodder for character arc and stuff. One of the things that I'm doing that right now with a different Burning Wheel campaign that we played just like 10 episodes of with another group, where I'm going back through and writing down all of like the important moments where I'm like, this scene was really impactful and it has to make it into the final version of the story. But yeah, changing a lot of things and making it better for a novel. I do think that one of these days we will get the Crow Inquisitors series, and it'll be great. It'll be awesome. I'm trying to remember. There was a direction. Never mind. I don't remember where I was gonna go. I don't remember what we were talking about before we got on this tangent. So
we were all giving our hearts to the cause and saluting.
Yes. But yeah. Now that we
right down here.
Yeah. Now we're done with Crow Inquisitors, we're gonna do some new things. We're still in the middle of Heroes in Training with Connor, David, and Jared and I, doing a little young adult superhero thing. But yes, I mean, Adam, we certainly want to have you back for another campaign at some point. But yeah, we'll keep you in the loop, and you let us know if you're excited about anything in particular, and we also
got to play a board game. We kept saying we were going to play a board game on.
We can do that with you, Adam.
Playground or simulator.
We'll do it.
We did that
once. Crow Inquisitors
like half a day once. Never finished it.
Yeah, we never even finished that game. It was literally a short game.
Yeah.
What was it?
We were playing Betrayal at House on the Hill.
Yeah.
We had like
we got
to the point where we got the haunt. No, I think we didn't even get the haunt. Yeah, we got I think the next haunt roll like has to be the haunt, and then we stopped.
I remember that now.
We got to play Twilight Imperium.
We'll see.
I think you'd all
remember how David and I for like half an hour talking about how Burning Wheel's too rules heavy. I'm just kidding.
This is a lot about.
I'm willing to play that at some point.
I think the things for me about the rules, just real quick, is that like you can have a lot of rules, and that's one thing. Having a lot of rules with a lot of exceptions is the thing that Burning Wheel does that makes it hard to remember. It's easy to remember a rule. True. It's hard to remember that the rule is only true sometimes.
Yeah.
Yep. True.
So I think that's kind of why it's different.
Especially when we change the rules a bunch.
Well, yeah.
Well, we have to change the rules because we realized we were playing them wrong.
Yeah.
I suppose
the rulings changed is what he means. Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyways,
again, it's just a very complicated mess when you really get down to the nitty gritty of it. That was really fun, and that worked out really well.
Yeah. All right, cool. Well, we'll go ahead and leave off there. Thanks for playing, guys. Thank you for watching. This is the end of Crow Inquisitors, but it's not the end of role-playing games on his channel, so stick around.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, it isn't?
No.
I was about to say my goodbyes.
Thanks,
I'll never
guys.
see any of you ever again.
Yeah.
I'd like to thank both of you for watching our show.
Yes, all five of you.
All five of you.
Well, we just hope that the people who listen to the podcast version will accept that I'm not going to do it, and then watch the rest on YouTube. That's
it's kind of like the gateway drug.
Yeah, it's like, hey, you got to know how it ends now, even though you have to go through all of this.
It's a really good quality content, and then you have to slog through the closet guitar stuff.
Anyways.
All right. Thanks, guys. This is the end of our Post-Mortem. We're out. Adios.